Hey, welcome to Encounter Grace, everyone. We're glad you're with us. My name's Jason McKnight, and right here in the studio with me, I have Justin Tillman. Justin, what's going on today?
Not a whole lot. Just grateful to be here.
But that was a long pause.
There's a lot going on today.
Yeah, that's true. When you say not a whole lot, do you mean that literally or antithetically?
Yes.
So here we are. We're going to talk about you're grateful.
Gratitude,
Yeah, you're grateful to be here today. I caught that when you said that. We're going to talk about gratitude, and this is kind of a fun thing because, you know, one of the things we have to do is teach our kids when they're very little how to say thank you. We don't automatically know what gratitude is or how to say thank you, but it is something that we get this if you're a parent, you cultivate it in your kids. Have you ever thought about as an adult continuing the journey of cultivating gratitude? Yeah. Not just the verbalized thank you for, you know, when someone gives you a little piece of candy, but what does gratitude mean? And is there a way to cultivate it? And why does that matter? I mean, is that what we're going to talk about, Justin?
Yeah. And
I hope I got that right.
You did. And gratitude in the sense of, you know, we often think it's just a moment of thankfulness, but we're going deeper than that. And that today we're going to talk about how gratitude is not just that moment of thankfulness, but it is cultivating a life of intentional changes and a lifestyle of gratitude, because it runs much deeper in our brain than we think, and it has implications for the way we interact with other people, the way we interact with the world, the way we experience other people. It's all hardwired into our brains, and so it's a lot more than just saying, "Well, I'm so glad or grateful that I got X, Y, Z." There's more to it than that. There's science behind it.
Well, it is a funny or an it's amazing to think that we can end up with a lifestyle of gratitude.
Yeah.
That actually can be how our lives are. And that's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. And what we'll dive into a little bit today is some of we won't bore you with all the science behind this stuff, but just
I won't bore you with any.
To wet your whistle. But what we're seeing is there's been a lot of research done in this area of gratitude lately. And everything they're finding is validating what we see in Scripture, which I think is really exciting, because this is a little bit different than when we did an archaeological dig and we found something that showed us King David was a real person. This is like, okay, this is showing us that what God says happens in our hearts and our minds is actually true. It's what actually happens. And when he tells us to, you know, be still and know that I'm God, or he tells us to enter his courts with thanksgiving, there's a reason he says that. It's not just, well, I want you to be happy when you come here. There's something to cultivating gratitude and thankfulness. And another word you'll hear us use today is deliberate appreciation. Now, cultivating those things in our lives actually make changes in our brain chemistry that promote good connection, that promote better connection with God, that promote emotional resilience, better mental health. All those things are attached to it. So saying thank you is a big deal.
Well, I deliberately appreciate your haircut.
Thank you. Thank you.
So there we go, back and forth. So we're going to hit neuroscience, a little bit of neuroscience, not enough to scare anyone off.
Yes, so don't turn it off just because we said neuroscience.
Yeah, and it'll be for a few minutes, and then we're going to move to some dimensions in our lives, in our relationships, and in our spiritual growth, and then we'll move a little bit to how this helps us to heal from the past, and then at the end, we'll just tackle a couple of, how-tos.
Yeah.
So that's where we're going today. A little neuroscience, a little bit of the dimensions, some healing, and then some how-tos.
100%.
All right. Well, I've laid it out. You do all the heavy lifting.
All right. Well, let's dive into the neuroscience. So the two guys that I have learned a lot from over the past year.
Pick me.
Well, one is Jason. He's the third guy. But two, Dr. Alan Shore and Dr. Jim Wilder. And so
these are good guys.
Alan Shore has spent decades studying the right hemisphere of the brain. And that's where, if we've done podcast episodes before on trauma and things like that, the right hemisphere of the brain is where emotions are housed, where your sense of identity is housed. And so he's done a lot of research there and done a lot of work with attachment theory and how we develop that sense of identity, how we develop that sense of attachment with other people, how we regulate emotions. And what he's found is that gratitude is something that comes from secure attachment. So what does that mean? Well, that means that based on the patterns, relationship patterns you had growing up, impact whether you're able to feel gratitude or not. Now, if you didn't have those attachments growing up, the first thought is, oh my goodness, I'm stuck. I can't feel gratitude.
Right.
The beautiful thing is that your brain is plastic. We call it neuroplasticity. So your brain can be rewired in certain areas. And there are parts of your brain that hardwire in. But this part of your brain where the identity's housed, where your emotions are regulated, it does not hardwire in. So it can constantly be molded and shaped. And what Dr. Alan Shores found and what Dr. Jim Wilder has found in their research is that gratitude is one of the primary tools that impacts the way that side of our brain rewires.
Yeah, that's good.
So it has a really big impact on our thought process, our emotional health. And that's why, because it's all going on in that part of our brain that controls that.
Amazing. And this idea that our brains are plastic or that they are wireable or rewirable, you say, wow, gratitude is a tool to rewire our brains. Everybody understands that our brains are able to be changed. And we all know it in this one little word called habits. Because we know that when we do something enough, it becomes a habit and quote unquote, we don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
Well, how are we doing it then? And I always say this, when you first learn to drive and you're 15 or 16 years old and you have to back out of the driveway, it takes every ounce of concentration to get out, get that car out the driveway without hitting the mailbox and driving on the lawn and all that kind of stuff. After 5 years, you are backing out of the driveway at 40 miles an hour while you're texting and shaving.
Yeah.
Why?
I did that this morning, as a matter of fact.
It's because your brain has just got it in there and it's a habit and you don't have to think about it. So, okay, we get that on this side. Now you're saying gratitude actually is one of those tools that helps us. The habit of gratitude helps us become adept at things that we couldn't be adept at.
We say habit a lot of times with things that are physical. Like I've developed this habit of, just reading my Bible every day is a simple example. Or I've developed this habit of going on a walk every afternoon after. You've developed muscle memory. At the brain level, what has actually happened is a neural pathway has been formed and it's been reinforced. Myelinated is a fancy term for that, but it's been strengthened, which is why you can do it without thinking about it. What I want to challenge folks to think about is your thought life is the same way. You can develop a thought habit, just like you can develop a physical habit. So and gratitude is one of those thought habits that you can grow and you can develop, and that has a healthy impact on other areas of your life, your emotional health, your relationships with other people, your connection to God. So I love your idea of a habit. I want to encourage people to take that a step deeper and realize that your thoughts are habits too.
Yeah.
And so, negative self-talk, that's a habit. and it's the same thing is happening. A neural pathway is being laid down and it's being strengthened, it's being reinforced, and this rut is being created.
When do we go into my counseling session?
we can bleed in and out of it. We can bleed in and out of it.
Well, I think that's why Philippians 4:8 is such a rich verse for us. Whatever is true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, praiseworthy. Think about these things. I mean, there it is. The Lord's telling us, here's how you think. Here's how you change your thoughts. And what does it say? It says, the peace of God or the God of peace comes near. I mean, I think the peace of God is before 4:8, the God of peace is after 4:8, but right there is God comes nearer when we focus on what's good and lovely and true and noble.
Yeah.
We're actually becoming more the person God wants us to be and more like him.
Yeah. And that's what you're talking about, Shore and Wilder's research. That's one of the things that Wilder has shown is that part of our brain that houses our identity, that houses our emotional regulation, where all that stuff takes place, the primary way of healing or activating or repairing that area is appreciation, which is just another word for gratitude. And because appreciation is the thing, gratitude is the thing, that's where we get this idea of deliberate appreciation. So if I can train myself to focus on appreciation, to focus on gratitude, then I can actually rewire and reset the normal in my mind to something more peaceful, more focused, more centered. And that the beautiful thing, this is like one of those common grace things. This works regardless of whether you're a Christian or not, because it's the way God's wired your brain. But the beautiful thing is, if you add God to that and you bring him into the equation and you realize this same thing works with my connection with the Lord, then you can actually, by practicing deliberate appreciation and deliberate gratitude focused on what God has done in your life, You can strengthen your relationship with God while also resetting your brain to a new, more calm, relaxed normal. So that's why gratitude is important. And that's why the neuroscience is there backing that up of this. Yes, this is when God says, come into my courts with thanksgiving. That's why. When he says he loves a cheerful heart, he loves a cheerful giver. I mean, all those things like that joy that you see throughout Scripture, that is appreciation, that is gratitude. And those are the things that draw us closer to the Lord and strengthen our trust in him while at the same time giving us greater emotional capacity, greater spiritual growth.
Well, and then let's go to that, because I think this is great. I think to know that we can rewire our brains, to know that gratitude is one of God's tools for us, for our thought life to develop better, and that grows certain things in our emotional stability and our relational stability and our spiritual stability. Let's talk about those. What happens? What are the dimensions in these relationships and emotional and spiritual side that matter for us?
Yeah, well, first of all, the spiritual side, gratitude really can be seen as an act of worship. It is going
to your
back,
Psalm 100 point, enter his gates with thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's an act of worship. It not only helps us emotionally, but when we pause to reflect on the things that God has done in our lives, the blessings in our lives, and life can be hard. I get it. It can be hard. But I think if we all sat down and critically looked at our lives, we can find somewhere where God has blessed us, even if things seem like they're difficult right now. But focusing on where God has blessed us, we're not just connecting with our own emotions and reflecting on our own thought life. We're opening ourselves up to a deeper relationship with God, because what we're doing is we're seeing that blessing in our life. We're giving thanks for it, but we're also turning that thanks to God. And so that becomes an act of worship. So we can experience God's presence. Another guy that's done a lot of research in this particular area is Dr. Carl Lehman. And some folks may recognize him from Emmanuel Approach or Emmanuel Prayer. Some people may be familiar with that. But what that is this prayer model that he and Dr. Wilder developed together that emphasizes gratitude. And Lehman's research shows that gratitude, deliberate appreciation, is one of the most effective ways to experience God's presence. It does something in the mind related to how we relate to other people. Gratitude primes your brain to connect. So think about this. Like if you are talking to a friend of yours, if you are sharing with them something that you appreciate about them, what does that do to that relationship? It strengthens it.
Yeah.
It
draws them in.
Yeah, it draws both of you in.
Wow, you think that about me?
I do. I very much appreciate it. And then, I thought you were talking about you. Yeah, I do appreciate you. But yes, you're right. You think, you think that about me. You're glad to be with me. We talked before on the podcast about that being joy. But the same thing works with God. When we appreciate him and we share with him the things that we appreciate and we're grateful for what he's done for us, it does the same thing in that relationship that it does with your friend. It draws you closer together. So gratitude is a way for us to intentionally focus on God and prime our brains to connect with him and hear from him, which I think is one of the most important things that gratitude does for us. So not only does it rebuild our emotional capacity, but it primes us to connect with God, which is fantastic.
It's hard to grumble and do gratitude at the same time.
Oh yeah.
And that's, I think, the point.
Yes.
You're like, well, I'm not grumbling at God anymore, or I'm not grumbling at my wife anymore if I'm pausing purposefully to say, hey, thank you so much for X.
Exactly. Which is why
it's priming that relationship.
We joke sometimes in working with couples. It's like anytime you argue, start the argument with something you're thankful for, and then see how long that argument lasts, or how deep it goes.
I've always heard argue naked.
Well, I mean, I guess you could do that too.
Well, never mind. That's for another day.
But think about this. Every time you pause to give God thanks, you're stepping into his presence. Every time you stop to look at what is around you and to be grateful for it and to be appreciative of it, you're innately giving thanks to the giver of that gift. And so you're stepping into his presence. And I mean, just as simple as, God, thank you for the breath in my lungs, or thank you for this small moment. The gratitude doesn't have to be this big grand thing to work. If you think about how can I be more grateful, you don't have to dig for something huge.
Right.
What are you grateful for? Are you grateful for the fact that you're healthy right now, or that your legs don't hurt right now? Something that simple. It's the act of gratitude. It's not what gratitude is focused on. It's the act of it itself that's doing the work.
That's right. And when you're in a little prayer group with people, and maybe the leader is leading us through, and hey, everyone, as you're led, say a sentence prayer of praise or a
Mhm.
sentence prayer of thanksgiving. And so the first guy in the sentence prayer of thanksgiving, oh, thank you for your eternal grace and Jesus' blood on the cross and like everything. And
Yeah.
here I am thinking like, man, I just had a really fun walk this afternoon. And that sounds so lame compared to the cross and the grace but they're both, I mean, it's the act of gratitude and the bringing of everything to
Mhm.
him. And, that's what you're talking about here is it's priming us.
Yes. Yeah. God is already there. He's there waiting to talk to you. Like the issu's not on his end.
Yeah, we're not massaging his ego.
Yeah.
We're just trying to get us in.
We're trying to, I think of the story of Mary and Martha.
Mm.
One's busy doing things, one's sitting at Jesus' feet. Jesus didn't say that being busy was wrong or bad. He just said she's chosen the better portion, so I'm not going to take that from her.
Mm-hmm.
And I think gratitude is like that. Gratitude is getting away from the busyness and just taking a minute to sit down at his feet. Jesus is already there. Not doing it doesn't mean he's any less in love with you or cares for you any less, but by being grateful, you put yourself at his feet. You put yourself in a position to hear from him. He's already talking. You're just listening a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is good.
Yeah.
This is great. So it's priming us as we do it, which that's for spiritual growth. That's for relational growth. I mean, this idea of me consciously being thankful and finding something to give thanks for in a relationship or in a situation or in anything that I'm dealing with the Lord. That is part of God's growth for us.
Well, Jim Water has a thing called relational circuits that he refers to. And one of he has a little litmus test to how to know when your circuits are turned off. One of the things in that test, one of the check boxes is, am I appreciative? That's one of the key indicators is are your relational circuits turned on? And if they're off, you're not going to connect with people.
Yeah.
And so by doing deliberate appreciation, you turn that switch back on.
Right.
And so that's why it works in relationships with other people. And that's why it works in relationship with God is we're priming our brains to connect. And appreciation is one of the ways of doing that.
Yeah.
So it's a cornerstone of any good relationship in general, but definitely a relationship with the Lord.
And I think it's why teenagers have such a hard time because this is what we know about teenagers is their relational circuits go off as they give you one-word answers. They don't make eye contact because they're wrestling with all sorts of emotional growth, hormonal growth, peer pressure stuff. And, they're a kid, they're an adult. Which one are they? And it depends on the minute kind of thing. And if we as parents with teenagers can draw them out, can turn those relational circuits back on, can begin even by saying, man, I'm so thankful for you. I'm so thankful for how you've done X or Y. That little bit helps them maybe turn themselves on to the situation in front of them, which is turning the light on in the relational circuits, let's say.
Yeah.
And I think this, that's in a sense, my gratefulness helps to change someone else, which is a little bit different than my gratefulness changes me. The point is appreciation and gratitude is crucial in growing healthy relationships.
Yes. Yeah. Go back to our example of a friend. The more you show appreciation, the deeper that relationship's going to grow. And the same is true with our relationship with the Lord. The more we show appreciation, the deeper it's going to grow. The other thing I think is interesting about gratitude is talking about setting your mind. That Philippians verse, set your mind on things above. If it's anything's true, good, or honorable, think on those things. What gratitude also does is it shifts our focus. So a good analogy is when you go to buy a new car, let's say you're going to get a purple 4Runner. I don't know. You've never seen them. Like you'd never see a purple 4Runner until you're looking for a purple 4Runner. Then it seems like everybody in the whole city has that same car.
Yeah.
Well, there's this thing in your brain called the reticular activating system.
Whoa.
And
did you just swear at me?
I did, yeah. What all that fancy thing is that's just the thing that focuses your attention. And so the reason all those cars have always been there, the reason you're noticing them is because you're paying attention to them. And so what gratitude does is it shifts our focus from the things that are going wrong around us and all the things that are quote unquote bad. And it focuses us on what's positive and what's good and what's beautiful, what's true. Again, that Philippians verse, God was onto something when he had Paul write that. It focuses our attention on that. And lo and behold, that reticular activating system in your brain kicks in. And all of a sudden, what's at the forefront of your mind? The good things, the grateful things, the things you appreciate. Now those are starting to take front and center. because you've sort of biohacked the way your brain works.
Right.
And you're saying, hey, these are the things that are healthy for me to focus on. I want these at the forefront of my mind. Doesn't mean that you forget about the bad things or any of that stuff, but what takes forefront are the things that you're grateful for, the appreciation, the joy. That stuff takes the front seat.
Purple forerunners are everywhere.
There you go. So use your brain for you and not against you.
I like it.
But that's that habit.
Yeah.
You're changing the thought process.
Reticular activating system.
Yeah.
We notice it everywhere once we start noticing it. So we start doing it. Great. Okay, well that's helpful. Let's talk a little bit about trauma or healing or when things aren't going right, and maybe I don't have a lot to be thankful for, or maybe I think I don't have a lot to be thankful for, or maybe I'm just having a hard time because of stuff that's happened to me.
Yeah. Well, this is where that idea of neuroplasticity comes back into play.
I knew it was coming back.
It was. You can't get away from it. So going back to Alan Shore and his work with attachment theory and the right side of the brain, that's where our emotional regulation is housed. What we've seen from his work and Wilder's work is that gratitude, deliberate appreciation are the primary tools that impact that part of our brain in terms of rewiring it and reinforcing it. So what that tells us is if you're having difficulty with a certain emotion, or you're having difficulty with a traumatic experience, and we've got a great podcast episode on the different types of trauma. So we mean more than just physical abuse or something happening to you. There's more to that word. But if you have those things going on and they're causing you trouble, one way to begin dealing with them is cultivating this practice of gratitude and appreciation. Because while it might not address that specific traumatic issue that you're wrestling with, what it will do is begin to rewire your brain and begin to rewire the way you think. And like we said just before, it doesn't mean that those feelings go away, but what it's going to do, just shy of actually going to have those things dealt with and to process those things, you're shoring up your joy capacity. Right. You're making it stronger. You're building the appreciation muscle, which is what you can use to pull yourself back to joy from emotions like sadness or anger or despair or frustration. All those difficult emotions, appreciation is the primary tool you use when we talk about bringing us back to joy. That's what does it. Yeah. And so while you might not be able to deal with the exact emotional traumatic experience, you can build your joy capacity. You can build your ability to emotionally regulate. So what appreciation does, the way our mind works, when memories come into play, your mind can't tell the difference between an imagined situation or an actual situation, which is why anxiety is
especially at 2 a.m.
Yeah, that's true. Which is why anxiety is a thing. Yeah. Because you're getting pulled into a future that hasn't happened yet, but your body is responding as if it's actually happening. Mm-hmm. So when you go back and visit memories, an appreciation memory, deliberate appreciation about something good in your life, you're recreating the brain chemistry attached to that event. Wow. And so your brain actually will begin to feel those feelings of appreciation and joy and happiness or gladness, whatever it was you were feeling in that moment.
So how do you recreate an appreciation memory?
So through not just
or
remembering.
Is that the end of the podcast?
So that'll be a good segue into some of the practical stuff. Not just recalling the memory, but as you're recalling it, specifically going through, what about this memory do I appreciate?
Okay.
What was it that made this a good memory? I know innately it's a good memory, but what is it that makes this a good memory? Why was that such a good experience? Why was I so happy then? What was going on? Right. And then taking it a step further and saying, God, what were you showing me through this?
And an appreciation memory that I'm going to do this little bit of a reflection about. Mm-hmm. I mean, it can be like, it just happened that we had a wonderful Thanksgiving dinner evening with family and a couple of friends. Like that is an appreciation. Yes. It doesn't have to be like when I, had a mountaintop experience in Jerusalem per se. Like that also can be, but it doesn't only have to.
The memory is a means to an end. It's not an end in itself.
It can just be like driving down the road and that old song from 1994 came on and it just brought back all these things. And that was,
it could be as big as a fantastic vacation you went on. It could be as small as, I really enjoyed spending that 30 minutes out with my friend.
Gotcha.
That was just such a good outing. Mm-hmm. Or that lunch was just really good.
So like for me, this recording of this podcast, I can use this later as an appreciation memory.
You can. You got it's a freebie from me today.
Freebie from you.
But yes, exactly. So it's not, it is not the memory itself. It's the appreciation with the memory. So as long as the memory there's appreciation in it, it can be used.
Yeah, I got you.
And I encourage people, as you think of these memories, start a note file on your phone or somewhere else and write them down. Because twofold. One, it helps you to have a memory to go back to when you need to stir up some appreciation. You don't have to think hard. You can go back to your file and read some old memories. But two, the process of writing down the memory in detail and going back and reading it strengthens the memory.
Right.
So it gives you a bank to pull from, but also makes those appreciation memories even stronger the next time you go to them.
Right. So on your phone or in a journal, you say, hey, here's the memory, and it might take 3, 4, 5 lines or whatever to write. But then after you get it down there on the paper or in the phone, you're saying, all right, now what is it about this that brought me joy or peace, or where was God in this? Or
and that's where I think this is different than we'll just find 3 things you're grateful for. Mantra that we hear a lot of.
Yeah.
This is a step further. That is important. If that's all you do, great. That's a good first start. What the research is showing from guys like Wilder and Shore is go further than that. Not just gratitude, but specifically, what is it that you're grateful for, and why are you grateful for it? Why was that a big thing for you? Why did that land with you in a certain way? Because that's going to take it deeper than just surface level, and that's really going to start. One, it's going to help you know yourself better, but two, that's where the magic's going to happen in the rewiring, because it's not just I'm grateful, but this is why.
Yeah.
So you're taking it a step deeper. You're engaging more of your brain than just I'm really glad for the sunshine today. Well, why are you really glad for it? Go deeper.
Yeah, that's good.
So it makes that memory much richer.
I got a great example of that, but I don't know if you want to take the time to do a detour.
Sure.
I mean, my mom died in January, and so it's a year now. And she was. I mean, we're so thankful that we got to grieve over about 3 years of a degenerative disease, and we're so thankful for her release. And so that's great. And you're tender, but it's not a car accident kind of thing. It's this was, and thanks be to God that the gospel is true. And I called, this is up in Montreal. I called kind of my oldest, closest friend from childhood and from my teenage and 20s before I moved to the U.S. and still we're close. I talked to him today, actually. And I said, my mom's gone to heaven. He said, well, let's go for dinner tonight. Because my family wasn't there yet. And I was just staying with my sister and blah, blah, blah. And that evening, the night my mom died, it was like 3 a.m. that she died. But then that evening, my buddy and me, we rode around all the old places we used to go. We had dinner at the best restaurant we used to love eating at when we were single in our 20s. We both have families now, kids and stuff. And we talked about stuff we used to talk about and about what's going on now, and prayed together and loved it and laughed and just, goofy. And that, like on the plane home, I'd been talking to you and about appreciation memories. And I wrote that out and then thought about, it's the depth of our relationship. It's he knew and loved my mom, and our families go way back. It's the balm on a sad day.
Yeah.
It's the great food at the Baton Rouge restaurant, and all that together. And it was just a time that God used to sort of just carry me through. That's an appreciation.
It is.
Memory.
And you can, and the thing is, because you wrote that down, that is now in your bank of memories you can revisit anytime you want to stir up appreciation.
Anytime I'm particularly anxious or sad or angry or frustrated or worried or not sure.
Yeah.
You can go right back to, let me calm my brain down. And the appreciation is what it does.
Yes.
That calms our minds down, our brains down, so that then we can relate to the Lord, others, and reality.
Yeah. And not just, so Wilder's a strong Christian. I'm not sure about Dr. Shore, but I know Wilder's a strong Christian. I know Dr. Lehman is. Not just Christian research is showing this. Secular research is showing that gratitude reduces symptoms of depression, anxiety. It helps with emotional regulation. So yes, when you're feeling tense, when you're feeling out of sorts, that's what these appreciation memories do. They're a tool that you can, and so that's the emotional regulation piece. They might not necessarily deal with the traumatic experience. It can be a part of that, but there's more stuff to bring to bear on that side.
Yeah.
But what appreciation does in and of itself is give you a mechanism so that you're not stuck in that difficult emotion. You can bounce back from that. So Wilder recommends 3 times a day for 5 minutes to build this habit. Spend time in an appreciation memory just for 5 minutes, 3 times a day. So in the morning, middle of the day, and before you go to bed.
So like pull your phone out, the notes part, and say, hey, there's my appreciation file.
Yeah, and just spend 5 minutes
just
revisiting
for
that
5
memory.
minutes. Go back to one of the memories in there.
Because what it'll do is it'll show your brain, I can bounce back.
Yeah.
I have somewhere to go. I'm not stuck. And I think that's a grace of the Lord to give. And it doesn't sound like a super spiritual exercise, but the Lord uses it.
Amen.
Because that's the way He's wired your brain to work.
I think that's it. Is He uses it because it's according to the design specifications.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
It's how the machine operates.
So appreciation memories. So it is not the only thing for healing from difficult backgrounds or difficult times or whatever, but it is one of the ways that we can come alongside the natural processes of our minds and the natural outgrowths of our spiritual growth. And an appreciation memory, a deep appreciation memory, is one of those tools that you and I can have in our tool belt or on our phones. What are some other tools that we can use to build this gratitude lifestyle? Or do we need to say more on healing?
No, I think that's it. It's that just for healing's sake. Again, this is not the tool that's going to make the traumatic experience go away. This gratitude in and of itself is more like the balm, just to kind of put on it to make the hard feeling, to smooth off the rough edges. Appreciation can play a real big part in helping you heal from those traumatic memories, but it's the beginning of the process. There's more to process and unpack, but appreciation still plays a big part. But just in and of itself, it provides that pillow for you to fall onto when the feelings start to overwhelm you, or you feel like I'm just really struggling today.
And not just some part of the healing and some part of a pillow when you're falling, but also just in a regular course of life, a little bit of appreciation every day as a habit, as a practice, is something that unlocks our brain to growth.
Well, it goes back to that, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Yes, this works in the moment, but how much better if you can build this muscle before you need it. And
like compound interest, you don't notice the gain of it right away, but over time it will be exponential.
Yeah. So that's one practice.
Okay. Yeah.
3 times a day, 5 minutes, just spend some time appreciating a memory.
That's very
just
good.
Get quiet, relax, and spend time in the memory. Revisit it. Enjoy
and build that bank to go back to. Okay.
Maybe if you've had something happen that day, at the end of the day, add that to your bank of memories. So 5 minutes, 3 times a day, spend time doing appreciation. I'd encourage you start an appreciation file, either in a journal or on your phone, and start to collect these memories. One, it's just fun to do. It's fun to be able to look back on what has happened. But 2, they also serve a practical purpose of giving you a bank to go to. Because if anxiety is through the roof, you're probably not able to sit back and go, what am I grateful for? So pull your phone out and be like, all right, here's some things that have happened. It reminds me of when in the Old Testament, when God always told the Israelites to build an altar or to put up stones. He did that so that as they walked by them, they would remember what God had done for them. This is what this is.
Super good.
So call it your Ebenezer file or whatever you want to call it. But that's what you're doing. You're setting up altars. You're setting up stones.
Love it.
To remind you of what God's done. So the 5 minutes, 3 times a day appreciation folder. The other thing is gratitude journaling, which most people are probably familiar with. Of write down the 3 things you're grateful for.
Yeah.
But I'm encouraging folks to go a step deeper, which is not just the 3 things you're grateful for, but when you write that down, why are you grateful for them? So a good 3-step process I like to use is pause, reflect, connect. So pause is just that. Just pause. Take time to set aside in the quiet and quiet the rush, quiet the hurry. That Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I'm God. Just take a moment to stop and breathe and focus your mind on gratitude. That can reset your perspective for the whole day. But just pause. We don't do enough of that. Just pause and think. Next, when you're doing that, reflect. So it's not just about listing what you're grateful for, but understanding why you appreciate those things. Wilder calls it appreciation magnification. So what you're doing is you're being grateful, but you're putting a magnifying glass on what you're grateful for and really digging into why does that stir up gratitude for me? When you do that, you amplify the emotional impact, the relational benefits of it. So instead of just saying, I'm grateful for my friend, when you reflect, I'm grateful for my friend because they listened to me when I needed the support. They were there in that difficult day. I was able to get my mind off of what was going on, and they were just present, and they were there with me. That takes you much deeper than I'm so glad for my friend. I mean, just in listing out the things that you're grateful for, you can see I'm gone much deeper with my appreciation.
Well, and the discipline of saying, hey, let me find out why. I'm grateful for my friend. I mean, that feeling's in me or that sense is in me. Yeah, I'm grateful for you. But now, hey, wait a minute, let me reflect on that. Why? Oh, it's because Justin does this for me, or he brings this into the conversation, or he is like such and such. I wish I was. And, you get to, oh, that's why I love him as a friend.
Yeah. So
that
deeper. Yeah, 3 levels. List out the things you're appreciative of, why you're appreciative of them.
Mm-hmm.
And the next level is reflecting on what do I see of God's goodness in these things. Because every good and perfect gift comes from the Father of lights. And so that appreciation memory is a gift of God. That moment was a gift of the Lord to you. And so you're grateful for it. This is why you're grateful for it. But also look for where God showed his goodness to you in that. So it's going to strengthen your relationship with your friend that's in the memory or the people that are in the memory, but it's also going to strengthen your relationship with the Lord because you're going to see, oh, this was God's good hand. Yeah. This was a blessing.
Yep.
This is, he showed me his patience in the way my friend just listened, or he showed his tender care in the way that person would just sat with me. Or he showed me, because of the beautiful moment I had with my boys, he showed me how he loves me like a son. All those different things. So take it 3 levels deep, not just what you're grateful for, but why, and then what do I see of God's character and goodness in this gift that he's given to me. And then the connect piece is joy, or appreciation is relational. So pause, reflect on what God's done, and then I'd encourage you, if somebody's involved in that appreciation memory, share with them that appreciation. So like your friend, calling them up on the phone and be like, hey, I just want you to know how much I appreciate you and what you did there and how you were just present, the way you've supported me, because that's going to, 1, firm up that appreciation pathway in your brain, but 2, it's going to feed that person's soul.
Yeah.
It's going to spur them on to appreciation. So that's the third piece is connect, because we ultimately want to build connection with God and connection with other people. So as you go through this, don't just stop with, well, what has God done for me? Let that pour out of you to somebody else, especially if they're involved in what you're appreciating. Let them know. I mean, imagine how good that person's going to feel to get a random text in the middle of the day. It's like, I was just thinking about you, and I am so appreciative of you. Boom! You've just poured gasoline on the fire of that relationship and just made it so much deeper. Just in that simple act of connecting with someone and sharing with them what you're grateful for, that you see in them.
So good.
So yeah, that the 5 minutes 3 times a day builds that muscle. Having the bank of memories is a good go-to. It's your toolbox, your toolkit. And then the pause, reflect, connect is a way to walk through not just I'm grateful, but how do we take that deeper?
Yep.
And really engage this deliberate appreciation, magnification that is going to give us the biggest quote unquote bang for our buck when it comes to rewiring our mind.
I love it. Gratitude it's really a gift from God. We got to be thankful for it.
Yeah. It's more than just a thank you. It's it in of itself is a blessing from him. And there's some, again, the research showing that scripture's been right all along.
Well, it's an interesting thing. There's one guy in town that always asks me about every year. He says, now, do we give thanks for everything or give thanks in everything? And, and then maybe trying to sort of say, see, even like the cancer diagnosis, you should give thanks for the cancer diagnosis. And maybe you shouldn't, maybe you should, and people and back and forth. But give thanks in all circumstances. I mean, practice gratitude no matter where you are. Even in the dark times, you can have the appreciation memories of some beautiful, rich experience in the past where you're not feeling it in the valley of the shadow of death.
Yeah.
But by taking your mind there and seeing the Lord there, or pause, reflect, connect in journaling right in that moment of a fresh thing, these are ways that, this is me giving thanks in this circumstance.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for the valley of the shadow of death, but in this circumstance. And it's an unbelievable
having
gift.
a heart of gratitude in that moment. And it might not be for the thing, but you're developing that heart of, which is going to help level out some emotions. Again, it's not going to...
leveling out the emotions, that's very helpful, so that we're not driven by the ups and downs, but rather... And you're not saying so that we're stoic or, British with the stiff upper lip. It's rather so that you're saying we can live in the reality of God's world in spite of our spikes in emotions. We can quiet ourselves and return to...
Well, you see in Jesus, the joy set before him endured the cross. The two can exist at the same time. But yes, it is, how can we be more relational and stay connected to God even in the midst of this difficult thing?
Yeah.
Talking about, developing it in our kids. This is one thing we tried to start doing with our oldest, is at night when we do go to pray. What are you thankful for today? What was, not just what's your favorite part of the day, what are you thankful for? And then encouraging him, well, when we go to pray tonight, you start us off by giving thanks to God for that part of your day that you enjoyed today. So it might be something as simple as, I enjoyed watching Odd Squad on PBS Kids. Yeah. Okay, well, thank the Lord for that. But teaching him that this is the kind of people we want to be, is people who are grateful to God for the good things that He's done. And again, cool. He might have a hard day. It doesn't mean that the hard feelings go away. This is, how do we regulate so that those hard feelings don't overwhelm us, right, and become our driving force? And appreciation and gratitude are showing to be the primary mechanism by which we do that.
That's so good. Well, Justin, thank you so much for putting the legs under this idea, for starting us off with a little bit of neuroscience and then helping us with relational spiritual growth, even some emotional healing, and then mostly these last 10 or 15 minutes talking about emotional or talking about the tools we can use to grow in gratitude. I mean, I think one of the most, I think actually it is the most often repeated refrain of any prayer or psalm throughout the scriptures is, give thanks to the Lord, for He is good, for His steadfast love endures forever.
Yeah.
And that cluster of phrases as a prayer, I think, is repeated more than any other single prayer in scripture. And isn't it interesting that it's a gratitude prayer?
Yeah.
And our God is orienting us and inviting us and urging us to start our lives in every moment with some more gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
Give thanks to the Lord, for He is good.
It's amazing. You almost feel like He knows what He's talking about.
Well, Justin, thank you so much for this. I'm grateful, and I'll go and write an appreciation memory why you have enriched my life today. But I hope everybody watching and listening, would you send this to someone that it would be of help to, or just another step in the journey? We'd love to help people grow and think clearly. As we're thinking Christians, we want to think clearly about the world God has given us. So as you do that, we'll be thankful, they'll be thankful, you'll be thankful, and God will be pleased.
Amen.
Have a good one. Thanks for joining us.